Shalom, my friends. Welcome to Weekly Parsha with Yehuda Yisrael. This week's Parsha is Parshat Kedoshim. So moving on in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus. So Kedoshim basically means you shall be holy, right? It says Alehem Kedoshim, you shall be holy to the Lord, right? So this is a parsha discussing, it says, every man shall fear his mother and father. You shall observe my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. So emphasizing the honor of father and mother and keeping Shabbat, giving commands. You shall not turn to the worthless idols, nor shall you make molten deities for yourselves. I am the Lord your God. What's interesting about that verse is it says, you shall not turn to worthless idols, nor shall you make molten deities. Meaning that even things that aren't created with your hands, right? So this is where, Christians will say, well, I never made Jesus. Jesus always existed. Some silliness like that, right? It doesn't matter. No one worships Jesus in the Hebrew Bible, so he is a foreign God. And when we get into the book of Deuteronomy, we'll be able to parse out exactly, specifically, point blank, 100% to say that Jesus is clearly an idol worship when people try to worship him and pass him off as the God of Israel. So that will be in Deuteronomy 13 when we get to that. But now we're in Leviticus. So now it's just speaking about when you slaughter a peace offering to the Lord, you shall slaughter it with your acceptance. So just speaking about different sacrifices and how to deal with those. Holiness, whoever eats it shall bear sin because he has profaned the Lord. So it's saying that, giving specific ways to deal with eating of the sacrifices. So then it's giving discussion about harvesting and how to deal with that, reiterating a lot of stuff that's in the 10 Commandments, like you shall not steal, you shall not falsely deny, you shall not lie one man to his fellow. So just giving context for that. You shall not swear falsely by my name. So obviously more context to that. You shall not oppress your fellow. You shall not rob. And then giving hired workers' wage shall not remain with you overnight until morning. Interesting. So like business sort of laws, how to conduct yourself with business. You shall not curse a deaf person. You shall not place a stumbling block before the blind. A lot of people look at this in a more metaphorical sense. You shouldn't, if somebody has the inability to sense something, you don't go out of your way to make them fall, in a sense. You shall fear your God. I am the Lord. So, yeah. A person who is blind regarding the matter, you shall not give advice that is improper for him. For instance, you shall not say to someone, sell your field and buy a donkey with the proceeds, while in truth, you plan to cheat him, since you yourself will take it from him by lending money and then taking the donkey as collateral. He will not be able to take the field because a previous creditor had a lien on it, right? So stuff like that. That's also what that is speaking concerning. So, you shall not commit injustice in judgment. You shall not favor a poor person or respect a great man. You shall judge your fellow with righteousness. So basically saying you need to be fair in the way that you judge people and not have biases. So, yeah, the Torah is very specific in a lot of these laws. You shall not go around a gossip monger among your people. You should not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood. I am the Lord. So don't be a bystander. And don't say bad things about people. Lots of laws concerning that. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your fellow, but you shall not bear sin on his account. You shall neither take revenge nor bear a grudge against members of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Some people say that this is, and it says right here, Rabbi Akiva says this is a fundamental, all-inclusive principle of the Torah. A lot of people, Christians talk about the golden rule. I guess this is a good time to talk about how, in order to truly understand this principle, you have to love yourself first. The analogy is you can't pour from an empty cup. It's very true. The analogy rings true. You can't, a lot of people, want to be able to help people, and they say, I don't love myself, but I love my brother, I love my children, I love my parents, whatever, but I don't have any love for myself. Well, then you really can't fulfill this commandment. You have to love yourself first, because a lot of the love that we put into other people comes from us loving ourselves first. And that's, we're all creatures of God. We were all created, whatever, B'Tselem Elohim, right? So how do we do that? We have to love ourselves first before we can really love other people truly and fully. So you shall observe my statutes. You shall not crossbreed your livestock with different species. Interesting. You shall not sow your field with a mixture of seeds, and a garment which has a mixture of shotness shall not come upon you. So these are a lot of these are chokim. These are commandments that don't really make sense. So there's a lot of detail about, you have chokim and mishpatim. Typically mishpatim are translated as laws that make sense. Chokim are more, I don't know why God created this law, but we just do it, So there's it takes a lot of faith, in order to follow a lot of these. But yes, Jewish Orthodox people absolutely follow the laws of shotness. We have specific people who know differentiate between the wool and the linen, and we make sure not to wear clothing that mixes the two. If a man carnally lies with a woman, and she is a handmaid of a designated for a man, and she has not been redeemed, or had a document of emancipation been granted her, there shall be an investigation. They shall not be put to death because she had not been properly freed. So giving very specific stipulations for a very specific circumstance. You shall bring a guilt offering before the Lord in the entrance of the tent of meeting, a guilt offering, a ram. And the Cohen shall effect atonement for him with the guilt offering of the ram before the Lord and the sin that he committed, and he shall be forgiven for the sin that he had committed. No Jesus blood required, because it's never required, because it's not necessary, ever. So when you come to the land and you plant any tree, food tree, you surely block its fruit from being used. For 3 years it shall not be eaten. This is still observed to this day among Orthodox Jews. If you didn't know that, right? In its 4th year, all its fruits become holy, a praise to the Lord. And in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit in order to increase its produce for you. Right. So these are laws that are understood today and followed. So you shall not eat over the blood. You shall not act on the basis of omens or lucky hours. That's an interesting one, right? A lot of people. Well, we can get into more detail on that. What does it say? It says, such and such day is an auspicious day to begin your work, or such and such hour is unlucky to embark on a journey. Okay, that's okay. Interesting. So the Talmud discusses that a little bit. Like those who interpret sounds and actions, weasel, bird as omens. Okay. Never heard of that before. You shall not make cuts in your flesh for a person who died. You shall not etch a tattoo on yourselves. I am the Lord, right? So this is where it comes from, right? The whole idea of not tattooing yourself. Some people, I've heard some people try to argue, well, it only says for the dead. I don't know. It's hard to argue that when it says separately, you shall not etch a tattoo on yourselves. So it sounds like almost like two separate commandments in a sense. But yeah, I guess these were based on pagan rituals that people did in remembrance of the dead. Now, what's interesting is that a lot of people will say, like, I would never get a tattoo, only in remembrance of somebody who died. And it's like, but that's davka. That's specifically what it says not to do. So I find that extremely ironic. So yeah, if you get a tattoo and you plan on getting one that is in memoriam of somebody who is dead, you really can't get around the fact that you are clearly breaking a Torah commandment. I think even according to, like, I don't know, somebody that doesn't even understand this as like a general prohibition, I don't think you can get around that one. Either way, don't get tattoos. There's this myth, this Baba Misa, that if you get a tattoo, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. There is no such law. But, yeah, I mean, whatever. A lot of people would say, like, well, then how do Holocaust survivors get, buried in cemeteries? What? Because it's not a real thing. It's a Baba Misa. It's shtus. It's not really a thing. You can get buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have a tattoo. Just don't get one because you're not supposed to. Anyway, you shall defile you shall not defile your daughter by making her a harlot, lest the land fall into harlotry and the land be filled with immorality. So do not do that. You shall observe my Sabbaths and revere my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Okay, more of that. So don't turn to sorcery. You shall rise before a venerable person. Or maybe that's why people stand up when rabbis come into the room. I am the okay. I learned something new. I didn't realize that was directly in the Torah. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not taunt him. When a stranger who sojourns among, so basically love the stranger, right? You were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not commit a perversion of justice with measures, weights, or liquid measures. Mita keneged mita. Is this that principle? I think is what we're getting. You shall have true scales, true weights, true ephah, and true hin. I am the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So some people take this also like metaphorically, that you need to be very precise in what you're doing so that you're not cheating people. You shall observe all my statutes and my ordinances. Yeah, it says ekol chukotai ve'ekol mishpatai, right? So this is where we talk about the chukim and the mishpatim, which are two separate. That's the way they're typically identified. Chukim are the shotness and the don't mix wool and linen and that stuff that doesn't really make sense. And the mishpatim are typically understood as like don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. Stuff that kind of makes intuitive sense to some. Not all, unfortunately, but yeah. So, well, this is a little interesting tidbit here. Showing the discerning. Okay, it's saying that God is very specific about things. So you can read that if you want. Vayikra, chapter 20. So we have the Lord speaking to Moses, and the children of Israel say, any man or children of Israel or the strangers who sojourn among Israel who gives any of his offspring to Moloch surely shall be put to death. The people of the land shall pelt him with stones. I don't know why that turns into a conspiracy theory against Jews, that like people to this day say that I've never, this is a command against, we're not supposed to do this. So we differentiate ourselves by not doing things like that. We were the people that separated ourselves from doing abominable things like that. So it's absurd. Anyway, I will set my attention upon them and cut him off from amidst people because he gave his offspring to Moloch. Yeah, horrible thing to do. But if the people of the land ignore and not putting him to death, I will put my attention upon that male, upon his family. I will cut him off. Okay, so it will be specific there, where God will do it himself. Okay. And the person who turns to Ov or Yidoni, I guess those are deities of some sort, to stray after them, I will set attention on that person, and I will cut him off from my people. You shall sanctify yourselves and be holy. That is the theme, right? Kedoshim, there it is again. All right. And you shall observe my statutes and fulfill them. I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Any man who curses his father and mother shall be put to death. He shall be cursed, his father He has cursed his father and his brother is upon himself. Obviously, this is up to much debate about what that means and how that works, and we don't have a Sanhedrin and all that. So I guess this is, the wayward son. And a man who commits adultery with another man's wife, committing adultery with the wife of his fellow, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. So some pretty serious stuff. A man who lies with his father's wife has uncovered his father. So these are the laws against forbidden relationships. Don't lay with your father's wife. Don't lay with your daughter-in-law. Don't lay with... So this is the infamous, this is the basically against, homosexuality. The action is specifically noted here. So, right, it uses that word toeva. Take that as you will. And a man who takes a woman and her mother is evil counsel, they shall burn him in the fire, and and them in the fire, and there shall be no evil counsel in your midst. Okay. So you know the punishment for that. And a man who lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. You shall so bestiality, don't do that. So the woman who comes close to any animal so that it will mate with her, you shall kill the woman and the animal. Okay. Interesting. A man who takes his sister, a man who lies with with a woman who has flow, and uncovers the nakedness. He has bared her fountain. Interesting analogy. And she has uncovered the fountain of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from the midst of the people. The karet, they say. And you shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister and your father's sister, for she would be bearing a close relative. They shall bear their sin. A man who lies with his aunt has uncovered her uncle's nakedness. They shall bear the transgression. They shall die childless. And you shall observe all my statutes and my ordinances to fulfill them. I am bringing you to dwell. I will not vomit you out. And you shall not follow the practices of the nation that I am sending away from before you, for they committed these sins, and I am disgusted with them. So then it's talking about what's going to happen when they go into the land. Then it discusses the clean and unclean animals again, the kosher animals rendered clean versus unclean. You shall be holy to me. So this is just to separate ourselves, to be holy. A man or a woman who has the sorcery of Av or Yiduni shall be put to death. They shall pelt them with stones, and their blood is upon themselves. That is the Parsha. So I hope this video has been a holy blessing for you all. Shalom Aleichem.